Morning, friends. Today it's time for a little bit of armchair philosophy. Mind you, I have no credentials on this matter, it's just my thoughts. But I want to talk about hedonic versus eudaemonic pleasures, and um, and like my thoughts on those basically. So, for those who don't know, hedonism is kind of anything that gives you instant gratification. So eating junk food, watching TV, playing video games, etc. Like things that are easy to do, but it kind of stimulates you. You feel instant gratification, and yeah, it feels good. And then eudaimonic pleasures are things that might take some effort to do. You might not enjoy the process as much. Sometimes you do, but after, like, it's delayed gratification. You feel gratification after the activity. So it could be things like drawing a picture or writing a book or building something, like woodworking, something like that, or gardening. So these are two like fundamentally different ways of spending time or doing activities, and I think we spend a lot more time on the former, on hedonic activities. They're just easier. It's easier to sit down and watch TV, and delayed gratification always requires some effort. So I want to talk about, like, the point I wanted to make is that I think it's important to just be aware of these two types of, I guess let's call them activities, and making sure that you have some sort of balance when it comes to these. And I guess the thing I'd caveat is that I'm very anti-optimization. I don't think you should be optimizing your life for productivity or anything like that. This isn't about that. This is more about just balance and well-being, which is kind of how I think about things. I think if you spend all your time on just pure hedonic activities, that's is not the best. Like it's not the ideal way to be, I think. A lot of the time, hedonic activities, depending on what it is, some of them, like doing drugs, will, for example, make you feel worse after the activity. So I think being able to have a balance there is important. So I get that rest is important, and a lot of the time hedonic activities like watching TV, for example, is a way to rest and wind down. And a lot of us have difficult jobs, childcare, you're exhausted. Once you have any sort of semblance of free time, if you have any, you're exhausted, and you just want to kind of relax. That's totally fair. I think, like, nobody should feel bad about that. That's completely, like, I'm a fan of 888, so 8 hours of sleep, 8 hours of work, and 8 hours of free time. But for a lot of people, parts of that get, like, some people work more than 8 hours, don't get 8 hours of sleep, and a lot of the so-called free time that's supposed to be left is spent on life admin, on childcare, etc., chores. So a lot of people have very little free time left and want to spend that watching TV. Totally understandable. But I think it's healthy if you have the time and you have the time and the energy. If your life allows for it, to try to have at least one eudaimonic activity in your life. So finding something that you can do, like taking up some kind of hobby that you can do, like drawing or growing something, or building stuff, woodworking. Can be anything really. Because when you compare, for example, spending 40 minutes or an hour watching a TV show versus spending that hour just drawing a picture, even if you don't know how to draw, just sitting down and drawing a picture, the picture will still give you, like after the show is over, the picture will still give you more satisfaction than the TV show will. So this is generally true anyway. So I think that's kind of like the point I wanted to make, is knowing the difference between these two types of activities, being aware that ideally you have some sort of balance, and it's very easy to overdo hedonic activities, to essentially be addicted to them. That's where addiction comes in, and it can be complicated if you're finding yourself, say, I don't know, you play too much video games, or you watch way too much YouTube, which is what I do, or you spend way too much time on some kind of hedonic activity, and you find you cannot stop that. That's probably, like, I would recommend like seeking help in that kind of scenario. I think that's like a totally reasonable, it's a smart thing to do. A lot of the time there's underlying issues, like ADHD is obviously a big one, speaking from experience there. So essentially, again, I'm not saying like eliminate things or abstain from things. I'm saying balance is important. Understanding these things and being aware of them is important. And in the same vein, another thing to be aware of is the hedonic treadmill. So hedonic pleasures, they ultimately, humans are in a way wired to become, to adapt to hedonic pleasures. So you will, like the first time you do something, you get more gratification, but the 10th time you do it, or the 100th time, you get less stimulation from it. So with hedonic pleasures, the tendency is to go more and more, further and further. So being aware of that as well, and being able to kind of say, okay, like, you know, buying this thing or whatever, or doing this thing, maybe I shouldn't, because it's just my brain seeking out stimulation that ultimately isn't going to give me lasting gratification. But yeah, those are my thoughts on that. I hope you found that useful. Bye.